Hello, World Civilizations. Mr. Lassiter with you. And today we're going to be looking at the Northern European Renaissance. We've been focusing a lot on the Renaissance in Italy and what it looked like in the northern Italian city-states. And now we're going to be looking at the rest of Europe, particularly places like Flanders, the Netherlands, and Germany. So our video goals: what did the Renaissance look like in Northern Europe? What did art look like? What shape did it take? How was it different? What Renaissance ideas came out of this? So we're going to see humanism taking shape in Northern Europe, and it's particularly this idea of Christian humanism. And then how did the printing press impact Europe? We're going to be talking about that a little bit and really bringing us up to the eve of the Reformation. So our vocabulary includes Flanders, Jan van Eyck, Christian humanism, Desiderius Erasmus, the printing press, Johann Gutenberg, and the vernacular. So let's talk about the Northern artistic Renaissance. Like in Italy, Northern European artists became interested in portraying their world very realistically. However, they had a different approach for doing this. While in Italy, they had these churches with large walls that they painted huge frescoes on, Northern Europe had Gothic architecture from the Middle Ages, where they had large stained glass windows and stone walls of churches, and so they went about painting on a much smaller scale. Instead of huge frescoes on walls like you see, like the pictures you've seen from the Sistine Chapel, which Michelangelo painted, we're going to see Northern artists painting illustrations for books or painting wooden panels for altarpieces instead of large-scale art. They didn't use perspective as much, but people like Jan van Eyck, who painted this image, were interested in portraying it just kind of as the eye would see it. So there is perspective in the painting, but it wasn't quite as rigid as what we see in Italy. Flanders, a region in northwestern Europe, was home to a very important school of art. And out of this came Jan van Eyck, who developed the use of oil paints. And odds are, if you've painted in art class, you've used oil paint. It enabled artists to use a wide variety of colors and paint very detailed art. You can see here Giovanni Arnolfini and his bride painted by Jan van Eyck on the right of your screen. Other northern artists copied this, but they also studied what was happening in Italy, and many of them tried to imitate that. So we do see the spread of this type of art move from Italy to Northern Europe, while at the same time new inventions, new developments like the use of oil paint is happening in Northern Europe. Out of this idea, we have, of course, an intellectual renaissance as well during this time period. And the Northern intellectual renaissance really occurs as a precursor to the Protestant Reformation. Now, we're going to get to that, we're going to study that, so I'm not going to go completely into it. But basically, it involved reforming the Catholic Church, and even people breaking away from the Catholic Church to form other religious sects. Anyways, so humanist ideas that we've talked about in this spread northward into Europe, and into Northern Europe. And an idea or a movement called Christian humanism developed. Basically, the goals of Christian humanism were to reform the Catholic Church. They believed in ability to use reason to improve themselves, and in order to change society, they believed they could change the human beings who make it up, and that would eventually lead to reform in the Catholic Church. A lot of these ideas you've heard before. One of the most important of these Christian humanists was Erasmus, who you see pictured here. He called his own view the philosophy of Christ. Basically, he believed that Christianity should not just provide a system of beliefs and practices that you must follow. He didn't think that you should just go to church and receive the 7 sacraments and then be saved. He believed Christianity should show people how to live good lives on a daily basis, and that would eventually help them achieve salvation. Inwardness was important, so kind of how you were as a person, becoming a good person, learning to live that good life. Not necessarily outward signs that the Catholic Church had been promoting, such as pilgrimages, fasts, and veneration of relics. He believed that those were kind of unnecessary. So he criticizes the church. Even in his writings, he criticizes monks for things like the color of shoelaces, and he pushes for reform in the church. And his ideas are very influential for the Christian humanist movement. Now, these ideas spread rapidly in Europe because of the invention of something that we take for granted nowadays, but the printing press. The Renaissance sees the development of printing with movable type in Europe. So basically, each letter you could change out in a machine and you could print more quickly. Instead of carving an entire plate, which you then printed on paper, this guy Johann Gutenberg plays a crucial role in developing a movable type printing press. Gutenberg's Bible, which you see pictured at the bottom there to the right, was first printed in 1455 and was the first book ever produced by movable type. But 45 years later, by 1500, there were over 1,000 printers in Europe who were using this technology. So prayer books, Bibles, sermons from important bishops and priests, Roman and Greek classics, books of philosophy and romance were very popular, as well as books by humanist writers. People were writing much more in the vernacular or local language. So that as that increases, more people will learn to read these languages. Instead of having to learn, say, Latin and then be able to read this, they would just learn to read in their own language. So this increases the desire for knowledge, it increases literacy, and it increases the spread of ideas that would challenge those of the Catholic Church. So basically these Renaissance and these Eve of the Reformation ideas spread more rapidly with the printing press and spread throughout Europe. And this is going to create a great deal of change with the Reformation coming. That's it for today. Make sure that you can answer those questions from our video goals and make sure you can identify the vocabulary on your screen. And then take a look at this map, artists of the Renaissance and where they come from. That's it. Have a wonderful day.